Firstly, I invite you to just cast your gaze around the room to people that you know. There's so much collective capacity in this room. I invite you to do that right now. Cast your gaze around the room. Acknowledge not just people's accomplishments, but who those people truly are. Could they represent the collective, the future of Niagara? I'd like to talk about our collective consciousness, and I think these photographs for me exemplify this concept of we. The first one's starlings, but what they do is they fly in unison, intuitively. The second one, I believe, is St Catharines Cycling Club, who really exemplify this concept of the modern tribe. This phrase, the tribe, it's actually only been talked about in academic papers since 2006. It's a very modern philosophy. Could be called community. The last one is Niagara on the Lake and the Dîner de Blanc, which is a semi-spontaneous dinner for no particular reason. Where do I send this? There. See? Even people in 2012 are getting accustomed to technology. This is me. I started out in the fossil fuel industry until a transformative gift told me that I needed to do the work that the planet put me here for. And I believe for all of you, you have unique gifts and qualities that may not necessarily be able to be defined, or current technology can put you into a role that has a boundary. But the world needs the kind of qualities that you have very urgently. Sadly, we're leaving Niagara, but what was interesting to us is that she didn't let us leave until we fell in love with her. When I first came, I was trying to kind of break down the doors. I was beating on organisations and government doors saying, can you not be more responsible? That was my kind of mantra, efficiency and change and being responsible corporately, but taking risks. And what I got back, what I learnt indirectly, was that it's not about the institutions and the structures, but it's about the need to have growing and evolving people, conscious people inside those institutions. And that's what Niagara gave me. This kind of exemplifies it. The greatest return on investment that you can have inside an organisation is the people. You can either have the living dead, or you can look like Facebook offices. Much more like a home, don't you think? UCLA did a study last month, and they found that they surveyed 5,000 businesses, sustainable businesses, businesses that tout themselves as green. The average productivity of those people was 16% higher than the average productivity of the average worker. There's something to be said for taking that corporate responsibility. I'll talk about these pictures in a minute. This phrase, we are they, where it came from, I was cycling, road biking with a friend of mine, with a bunch of us. This corporate friend was listening to me complain about planned obsolescence, about a dishwasher part that had broken. Who knows what, show of hands, about planned obsolescence, what that is? So most of you, it's basically the perception of how long stuff lasts before it breaks. And we know it breaks long before the durability that it could be designed for. So I was complaining about my dishwasher parts, and I said something about they may tag, and he said, stop, we are they. It was his phrase. This whole thing is based on this one phrase. And we know that consciously, but for some reason that hit me right then and there. Now this fellow kind of exemplifies corporate responsibility. He manages a hotel in Niagara. They have green accreditation, highly engaged workforce, and he's part of the cycling tribe. So look out, dishwasher manufacturers, because corporations can receive a lot of change from the we, from the collective. This example, it cracks me up. Serious, but also very creative. So in Sumatra, the Indonesian rainforests, the only habitat for the orangutan, it gets cleared so that Mattel can use the virgin rainforest paper pulp to make Barbie boxes. That's all. That's the purpose. And then from that they plant palm oil, palm trees, to make palm oil, and the major one product that comes from palm oil is Kit Kat. So who's eaten a Kit Kat? Ever? Everybody. and maybe not played with a Barbie, but certainly had some in homes you've been in or bought some for grandkids or whatever. So hands again. Barbies? Yeah. Look at that audience. Greenpeace captivated those you, the we. What they did was they brought in Ken, and Ken said, you know what, Barbie, you're dropped. You're dumped. I'm not into girls who are into deforestation. I'm not going to date you anymore, which is just beautiful. So basically, Greenpeace, through Ken, decided that Barbie should have a chat to Mattel about their virgin paper pulp. Classic case of we having that capacity. And then, relatedly, Greenpeace jumped in and landed on Nestlé's annual general meeting. They rappelled down from the roof. And they said, you know, what are you guys doing? As a result of that, Nestlé, I'm not entirely sure about how they changed, but the big thing was that the entire nation of the Netherlands banned unsustainable forms of palm oil from their chocolate manufacturing, which is pretty cool. And why do we have this kind of craziness? The big Mattels and the little us? Judith's a real fan. I'm a real fan of her work, and she talks about the metaphors for human evolution. She said that initially we had no tools, no technology. We were utterly dependent on Mother Earth. We were the Stone Age babies. And then we explored, like toddlers. We learnt to share a little bit. We found agriculture. We expanded on the planet. And then we stopped sharing. We got into the sibling rivalry phase, where we became like nation states, squabbling over resources and territory. Now we're in painful adolescence. You know, reckless, willful, oil-addicted habits, global identity crisis. We're like teenagers that have reached the limits of Mother Earth, just like teenagers kind of reach the carrying capacity of living at home with mum and dad. But fortunately, there's the next step. And Anadea talks about the global mature adult. How we are now focusing on cooperation. How networks have become this new mantra. It's not just about talking to someone at a meeting and networking and asking them about their golf. And even sustainability as a concept is evolving. And it's evolving in parallel. So it used to be about this single thing. You notice that everything's single for you visuals, and then starting to morph into a more holistic model. Initially, the tree huggers, those people interested in conservation, looked at just one single thing, looked at ecosystems in isolation. And then we changed to talking about preventing pollution and government regulations. We thought about the social impacts. And now we're looking at business efficiency. We're looking at greening our economy, financial tools, carbon taxes. So we're evolving even the concept of sustainability. And many people say that the last one is this holistic model, that it's actually a spiritual kind of model. And it's all about the fact that we've been trying to fix all these external things, but we haven't been fixing ourselves. The recession, there was an expected kind of retreat of sustainability efforts. And what was great, and what is great about crises, and there's one of our speakers later on will talk about these kind of post-crises booms, is that it helped the sustainability movement to refine what it does, looking at financial incentives, looking at being strategic. And what's amazing is the companies who've achieved that, they're smart and they're creative, which is what we all want our communities to be. And they're thriving. So too, not just businesses are thriving, but organisations. Paul Hawken is a fellow who's trying to identify the number of organisations in the world who have a very specific purpose, and that is to support this idea of human evolution. He's looking at organisations of which he thinks there's more than 1 million, not just small non-profits, but large institutions. They're kind of a mishmash of peace and Indigenous justice and environmental and civil rights and democracy movements. It's the largest movement on the planet, but it's under the radar, says Paul. However, at the same time, we seem to have this polarizing effect. We also have the teenagers. I think you can imagine who they are. Climate change deniers and the oil industry and the dollar store economy and the ideas that are touted by, I guess, Tea Party. The fact that we don't vote. Collectively, we are rejecting those kinds of structures because we don't feel that government represents us. It's they, not us. So, in fact, I would suggest that we're behaving as teenagers if we're suggesting that we can live in a democracy and not participate in it as a verb. So I hope you can see this slide, but it's a choice that I think we have, and that is to work towards a vision or to kind of detox away from a crisis. And I actually believe that this is the vision of the future. My vision is that we have interconnected local economies. I'm not alone here. This is not rocket science. It's kind of more Wikipedia. That there are capacities and skills that we all have that we need to be enhancing to support a larger economy. An economy that's going to be more prosperous, more equitable, and that is restorative rather than exploitative. So these people grow lettuce, these people need help with taxes, this person needs a math tutor. Isn't this the kind of civilization you would like to enhance rather than this? Previously, we've looked to religion. There's been father gods and mother goddesses, and they've been the things that we look towards. Modern spirituality now invites us to look at our divinity within. There's no kind of salvation to be found out there in the collective with large traditional institutions. It's right here in this room. And it is the responsibility that we all have, because we're like the first generation who have to look after the entire planet, not just Canada, not just Niagara, not just North America. Here's a little story. I'm kind of being indulgent here, but I want to impress upon you the idea of interconnectedness. And it's kind of my own personal story. I love Brazil nuts. They're high in selenium. They have cancer-fighting properties. And I just found that they were scarce in recent months. So I kind of researched it. It turns out that Brazil nuts, obviously coming from Brazil, but other places, Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia, when there is tropical deforestation, they keep the Brazil nuts, as you can see, beautiful, beautiful tall trees, because they're productive, they're of value to local communities. But the productivity drops rapidly when they're in isolation. Turns out, it's like a bit of a hippie story about peace-loving bees and flowers. Turns out that Brazil nuts need bees which only live on one species of orchid to survive. So these orchids don't live on Brazil nut trees. How handy would that be? They live on other trees, other species in that rainforest. So the female sits in the orchid happily in another tree. The male goes out and pollinates all the Brazil nut trees. Without that rainforest, we don't have the orchids. Without the orchids, we don't have the bees. Without the bees, I don't get cake with Brazil nuts in it. So I hope that kind of impresses upon you about interconnectedness and that we are more interconnected than we are led to believe. And that gives us greater capacity than we can possibly imagine. We need that because we have absolutely huge challenges. Last August, I was really fortunate to go to San Francisco and be trained on climate presentation training with Mr. Al Gore. And I was really skeptical. He seemed just too smug, for starters. And what he always said was crushingly depressing. And this is my business, this is my background, this is my passion. And I found it distasteful. So imagine, I know how you all feel about that. But he said some pretty cool things. One was that emergencies lead us to emergence. And he actually does also believe that the phrase they needs to go from our vocabulary because the climate crisis will not be solved by some remote collective organisation somewhere else. And he gave statistics that were so scary they made my head spin. But he also shone a light on what has happened with other institutions and governments and countries, and it cracked my heart open because he talked about urban farms that are acres and acres and acres in Africa, in Europe. He talked about a train in Belgium, I think it is, that the actual track has a roof over it made of solar panels. It's a solar train. He talked about this idea about carbon visuals. This is London, and these are public buildings. These are the ones with high emissions. That little one hasn't got such high emissions. Countries consistently now are overshooting on their targets. They're delivering incredible green results ahead of time, phenomenally. And what he taught me was that unless we sit with those difficult and discomforts and truths and take responsibility ourselves, we can't go to this place beyond ourselves, this wild visioning, this inspiration. So we have this amazing potential. This is another person I love, Joanna Macy, and she talks about something called the Great Turning. And I'll paraphrase, she says it's essential we develop our inner resources and look at things as painful as they might be. But that no healing can begin until we're fully present to our world and learn to sustain the gaze. I urge you to be expansive with your thinking and kind, because I think you guys are becoming more important to the bigger system. This word they, I'd like it to make it redundant, because I think we are they. Thank you.